start now that you can see the slides. So the purpose of the seminar tonight is just to take away that New Year pressure I feel that January always brings. Particularly with tomorrow being Monday, wanted to get everyone together to kind of avoid that Sunday scaries look, and talk about how to make that kind of January without the pressure. Okay, so we're gonna look at, oh, there we go. What we're going to cover is talking about 75 hard. So some of the things that you might be seeing on like social media, just yeah, in terms of that like pressure that we put on ourselves to try and do everything in January, okay, which is makes us feel quite overwhelmed. So I'm going to talk about what we can actually do that's practical to take away that pressure, but also to make sure we are making the progress that we want to see. Okay. Then we're going to talk about nutrition. So I know over Christmas, this is one thing that tends to slip a little bit just because of social plans. We're out of our usual routine. And let's be honest, one of the best parts about Christmas is the food. So I'm going to talk about how to get back to the basics without that, added pressure. Then I'm going to talk about supplements because this is the time of year where we might see lots of adverts about like detox teas, fat loss tablets, and things like that. So actually what supplements, actually work, but also what some of the things that we should avoid as well. Then I'm going to talk about training. So I know lots of you have still been consistent with training over Christmas. Some people will be getting back to it properly tomorrow once you're back in work, back into your routine. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that you can do this week just to really feel like we're easing ourselves back in, but also pushing for that progress that we want to see. And then I'm going to talk about my approach as a coach and what I want you guys as, to focus on this coming week to build that consistency, build those habits without feeling like you've got to juggle 100 balls. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, first of all, 75 hard. So I did actually put a poll on Instagram the other day to see if anybody had actually heard about this or tried it. So 75 hard is a challenge that asks you to complete all of these each day for 75 days in a row. So it wants you to complete 2 workouts a day, and one of them must be outdoors, which is quite hard considering it gets dark at about 4 o'clock at the moment. Follow a diet of your choice, but with no cheat meals or alcohol. So often it'll promote things like the no carb diet, fasting, it'll just sort of give you too much to work with, really. Drink 1 gallon of water daily, which is, we should be drinking water anyway. Read 10 pages of a non-fiction book. So it's encouraging you to, read like sort of like the well-being books, which again is helpful. Take daily progress photos. I think we all hate taking them weekly as it is. But if you miss one of these tasks, you go straight back to day one. Okay, which in theory, when you look at those, you're thinking, yeah, I could probably manage that. But what it doesn't account for is life. Okay, so as I put there, 75 hard isn't hard because it builds discipline. It's hard because it ignores context. So it'll ignore busy schedule. Now that we're back in work, things crop up in work. We might have to work longer hours. Hormones and energy levels. So things like time of the month, menopause, just generally feeling tired. Social events, social life, and also mental load. So it doesn't factor in all of those. If you're feeling unwell, which I know lots of you are at the moment, that would say if you can't get all of those ticked off, actually you go back to day one. So progress doesn't come from doing everything perfectly for 75 days. It comes from doing the basics well. And that's what I want to really show you in this, over the next 20 minutes is that if we just build and stack the consistency, that's where we're going to see the most progress. But also, we're going to feel good doing it as well. Okay, so what is the impact of putting this pressure on ourselves? Okay, that constant intensity means that we can be under constant stress. Okay, and what constant stress will do is actually make it harder, but also the physical symptoms of stress can actually stall our progress. Okay, so if we're on the weight loss phase, if you're under constant stress, you'll notice that you feel quite bloated. Okay, so it has the physical symptoms as well. Recovery suffers, so you might be sleeping, not getting good sleep, which means recovery is going to be stalled, and that motivation will drop as well. Okay, so we want to avoid all these kind of rules and build our own consistent approach. Okay, so what I'm going to ask of you and the approach that I want you to take is have a clear plan, which you should all have a clear plan because that is my job to support you with that. Okay, you should know exactly, what we're doing in terms of training, in terms of nutrition, in terms of that, outside of the gym as well. So the daily habits as well. Balance with your lifestyle. So appreciate that even though January generally is a bit quieter in terms of social plans, this still will be, people's birthdays and things where we can't necessarily stick 100% to the plan. So that's where the ability to adapt comes in as well. And that is one of the things as a coach that I will support you with is when these things do crop up, we have that ability to adapt to it, and we might have to adapt our sessions or our nutrition, and that's okay. Okay, so that's the approach that I want you to take into this year is that you don't have to do things perfectly, but what I do ask is that you're consistent. Okay. So I'm going to talk about nutrition firstly. So this time of year, I see a lot on social media about things like the detoxes, different, juice plans, and what we want to do is avoid that approach, okay? We don't want strict rules around nutrition. We do want that consistency. And as you all know, my approach with nutrition is having that balanced approach. So 80% of the week, we want to be focusing on your whole foods. And then that 20% gives you the flexibility where you might be going for coffee with a friend, or you might have to switch up your meal plan a little bit. So we want to stick to your meal plan as close as you can. Okay, that is there obviously to follow. That structure is there to support you. But there may be times where we can't stick 100% to that. Okay, so what we do want to focus on is high protein meals. Okay, so protein at every meal, and this is to support not only your progress but your training as well and your recovery. See carbs as fuel, not something to be earned or fear. So lots of the sort of fad diets will be, cut out carbs, and eat meat only, okay? And then whole foods most of the time without cutting out foods that you enjoy. So for me, when I'm setting a meal plan for a client, I want people to enjoy it. I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, I'm fed up of eating this. I want people to obviously, we would all like to eat more chocolate, more snacks, but it's about incorporating foods that you actually enjoy, but also support your goals as well. So we want to focus on that structure over restriction. And this is one thing that I wanted to cover as well is dealing with a slip up. So often, when maybe we have something that's not necessarily on the meal plan, or we go out with a friend for a coffee and we have a cake. I don't want people to feel this, overwhelming guilt. Okay. What we don't want to do is guilt trip and turn into that all or nothing. So, we feel guilty and then it slips into, oh, okay, I've ruined it for this week, so I may as well just carry on. Okay, so we want to avoid that all or nothing mentality. What we want to do is refocus back on the basics. Okay, so focusing on, splitting your plate into your protein, your carbs, your fats, and your veg. Okay, so going straight back to that where we can. Your hydration as well. Really, really important to keep your hydration alongside your nutrition. And then planning your next meal or snack. So if you have gone off the beaten track a little bit, okay, we don't need to feel guilty and then in turn, it's that vicious circle. We want to get straight back on track, okay, and focus on, planning ahead. So I've noticed lots of clients, they've been sending me like their food shop or their prep. And what I would recommend doing on sort of like a Sunday is planning ahead, okay? Whether that's with your food shop or whether that's just having a little look through your meal plan and thinking, right, am I going to be able to stick to this week? What have I got coming up in terms of my schedule that I might need to adjust? And really, really important not to skip meals, okay? If we can, even if we do have to, adapt your meal plan a little bit, really important not to try and not to skip meals. Okay. So even if we have had a little bit of a slip up, what I don't want you to do is then think, right, I've had a cake at lunchtime, so I'm not going to eat my tea. Okay. Because that is actually going to be more damaging for our progress, but also the mindset side of things as well. So I'm going to talk about supplements next. So I touched on this a little bit at the start by saying in the media now, lots of the adverts that will come up on sort of Instagram and Facebook are all going to be around, that new year, new me. This is the time of year where generally people, do want to lose a bit of weight after Christmas or they want to focus on their health a little bit more in the new year. So this is the perfect time for marketing. Okay. So supplements are there to support, okay, not compensate. So we'll often get our sort of daily vitamins and minerals through your meal plan. Okay. So if you are eating healthy, you're prioritizing, fruit and veg at every meal, you're gonna get that anyway. But these are some of the supplements, especially for women, that I would recommend. Okay. Worth considering, says they're for most people. And the first one, Claire was talking about this in the chat the other day, actually, is electrolytes. Okay. So if when we're training with intensity, or especially if you do any sort of like running, hiking, it's really important to rehydrate. So as much as drinking 2 liters of water is going to do that for us, electrolytes is essentially putting our body's salt levels back in. So when we sweat, obviously we excrete salt. So it's basically putting the salt back in to our bodies, and it's really, really important if, as I said, you do running or you're quite a sweaty person when you train. I definitely am. So electrolytes is something that I don't have it every day, but if I have had quite a hard training session or feeling a little bit dehydrated, I will have electrolytes, okay? There's loads of different brands with electrolytes as well. So the ones that Claire was saying about in the chat the other day, Humantra, they are really nice. They're good as well, but they are quite expensive. But I will pop in the link to the ones that I use, and you can pick them up from like supermarkets. And they are just as good. So I'll pop a link to those in the chat later. So if electrolytes are not something that you've used before, definitely would consider, incorporating these, especially if you are quite a sweaty person. And then the next one is protein whey, and I've touched upon this quite a few times in different seminars and probably on check-ins as well. I only promote using protein whey if protein is something that you're struggling to hit within your nutrition. Okay, so if you're following the meal plan directly, you're going to be hitting your protein goal. But if you have that more sort of flexible approach to your nutrition and you're finding that you are under on your protein quite a lot, then I would, recommend using this, whether you have it as like a protein shake. You can also put it in things like overnight oats. your yogurt bowls, which I know are quite a popular one. Okay, so I would only really promote using protein whey if you are under your intake. Okay. The next one I would say is creatine. I get loads of questions about creatine actually, on check-ins and just yeah, just people saying, should I be having creatine? It's not essential, okay, but it is really good for the body's sort of like recovery. But also it has been shown to improve sort of your cognitive function as well, like concentration, with training and even with just sort of day-to-day tasks as well. So creatine again is there's loads of different brands. Okay. So what I would recommend is looking at the ingredients. Okay, so we want minimal ingredients really. We want usually just sort of creatine, and there might be a little bit of sort of like flavor to it as well. But with creatine, if you are looking to buy one, I can give you some recommendations, or if you do have one, you want me to have a little look at it, more than happy to do that. But with creatine, what I will say is if you are new to taking it, sometimes it can cause scale weight to increase a little bit. And it shouldn't make you bloat. Okay, but the with creatine, I won't go into it in too much detail, but it's essentially it helps your body absorb water like within your muscles. Okay, so you're not going to visually see it. But it is good for that recovery and performance element. So what I would say is if you are going to start taking creatine and you notice that the scales have increased a little bit, don't panic and think that it's like bulking you out. Okay, that's not what creatine does, but it can sometimes make us retain a little bit of water initially. The next one I would say is vitamin D, especially this time of year. Like I'm sat here now, pretty much in the dark. Okay, we don't get a lot of sunlight this time of year. So vitamin D, I would say, especially during these months, are going to help. And then magnesium. So this is really good for sleep and recovery. Also, if you are a coffee drinker, I feel like women, we get dealt the bad cards sometimes, but magnesium in women is a little bit lower, especially if we drink coffee. So that coffee can actually lower your magnesium levels slightly. So that is one that I would definitely recommend for sort of the hormone purposes, but also your sleep and recovery. So with magnesium, they say it's best if you take it just before bed. Okay, so it has that better effect with sort of that sleep, and allowing our body to kind of recover through the night. So I want to reiterate there though, coffee, that is not me saying you shouldn't drink coffee, because I don't know about anyone else. I don't think I could function without coffee now. But if you are a coffee drinker, definitely something that you should consider. So on the flip side of that, supplements that are probably not worth money or time is things like fat burners. Okay, as I said, marketing for these kind of things will go through the roof now the next couple of weeks, because people just want that quick fix. And actually, if these products did work, I would be out of a job, okay? Because if they did work, people would just buy that, and everything would be fine. People would be happy with it, with their progress. So we want to avoid anything that kind of promotes that quick fix, okay? Because unfortunately they don't work, and also they don't encourage us to make the changes to the lifestyle, that kind of going to the gym and eating properly promotes. Detox teas as well. So there's loads of these different detox teas now, weight loss. I think I've actually tried them myself over the years. Like I did the Slim Fast. There was another one, Juice Plus, I think it was called. And what I noticed about it is essentially like taking like a laxative. So you will lose weight, of course. But it is that it's not sustainable over a long period of time. And actually sometimes it can make us feel quite quite ill. Okay, so if it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Okay. And then on to training. So I know lots of you were quite fairly consistent with training over Christmas. You might be looking at getting back into routine a little bit more this week. I feel like everybody's kind of back to work and back to business, this week. But what are some of the things that you can do in terms of your training, to really push forward with your progress now, going into the new year? So first of all, I want to say that doing more, okay, isn't always better. The quality of what you do is what's important. Okay, so in terms of training, it's not that you have to increase your sessions as such to make progress quicker. It's thinking about the quality of which your sessions. So prioritizing strength as the foundation. Okay, so with resistance training, we're going to be looking at that progressive overload. So where we can lift a little bit heavier, where we can increase intensity, okay? And also movement outside of the gym. I've noticed lots of when the weather's been nice the last couple of days, people have been out walking a little bit more, okay? So it's the things that you do outside of the gym as well that are really important. And this could mean go into yoga. It could be, those types of things as well. So it's not about necessarily doing more sessions in the gym, but thinking about how you can do that additional movement outside of your sessions as well. So put the consistency beats intensity every single time. So we want to look at being more productive within our sessions rather than increasing the amount of sessions that we do. Okay, so I've popped together like 3 pointers of things that you can do this week. Okay, so things that you can actually incorporate during your sessions this week is one thing that I do quite a lot. If you do PT with me, you'll know I make you do this sometimes. If you are plateauing on a certain exercise, so if you've noticed that actually I've been on, these dumbbells for a couple of weeks now, and I'm really, really finding it hard to go up to the next level with weight. Add one extra set. Okay, so if I've given you 3 sets, what I want you to do is do your 3 sets, and then on the 4th set, I want you to pick up the next dumbbells up. Okay, so if we're going from 5s, it might be to 7.5s, and see how many reps you can do. Okay, so it's not always about getting that full set in, okay, but sometimes just pushing past your comfort zone a little bit. Okay, so if you do have PT booked in with me this week, you'll have no choice but to do this. And then second point is slow down one lift. Okay, so particularly with exercises that feel quite challenging, sometimes we just want to get them over and done with. So we might be rushing through an exercise. So I really want you to focus this week on slowing down with your tempo. Okay, spend more time under that tension. Okay, think about sort of on the hardest part of the rep is where we need to slow down. Okay, pause and then reset. Okay, making sure we're still focusing on form, so we don't want to do it so slow that we pull our back out. Okay, but really thinking about slowing down, how can I get the most out of this exercise? And with that in mind, when you are really being conscious about training, always think about actually squeezing the muscle you're trying to work. Okay, so if you're doing a bicep curl, for example, at the top, I wanted to think about really squeezing. So not only are you slowing it down, but you're creating that mind to muscle connection as well. And then the last one is get some form feedback from me. Okay, so if you can record at least one exercise this week, send it over to me on WhatsApp and I can give you some feedback. Okay, because although it might, we might feel good, sometimes we can just make a little small tweak to get even more out of that exercise. Okay, so they're my 3 little sort of challenges for you this week. Okay, I will pop them in the chat as well, just to remind you of what we've gone over. But think about how you can incorporate these 3 pointers now in your training this week. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to focus on consistency, okay, across the board. So we are going to think about three non-negotiables that you're going to commit to most days. So instead of having that 75 hard, mentality where you have to tick absolutely everything off, I wanted to think about three, easy to follow but stackable habits to focus on this week. Okay. So it might be if you're struggling to get into back into nutrition after Christmas, you might have one around nutrition. Okay, one around movement outside of the gym. Okay, so maybe getting out for a walk on your lunch break if you wouldn't usually. And then maybe doing one small thing to set up for the next day. Okay, so I want you to aim for that 80% consistency. Okay, there are going to be days where sometimes maybe something's cropped up in work and we have to kind of maybe miss our session and try again tomorrow. Okay, but I want you to really get out of that all or nothing mentality. Okay, so have a little think about three non-negotiables. If you do want to share them with me as well, if you want to share it in the chat now or share it on WhatsApp, just think about three things that you can commit to this week, okay? And the good news is if you miss a day, you don't start over, okay? You just continue, and that is how these habits stick, and that's how we progress with our progress, across the weeks. So in terms of, I'll come to the end of sort of the seminar now, but what I want to sort of summarize is that we don't need extremes, okay? You don't need extremes your your lifestyle, okay? So your daily routine. You don't need extremes with your training. You don't need extremes with your nutrition, okay? We want to focus on the habits that actually stack the progress, but also don't put your body into that fight or flight where we're just constantly under stress. Okay, so have a little think about some actions that you want to focus on this week. They don't have to be massive. Okay, just small, stackable habits that you can focus on. And I will sort of be engaging in the chat as well this week about consistency week because I do think having a group of people who are on the same sort of path does help. So anything that you want to share in the chat as well, feel free to share those wins and just keep us updated on how you're doing with your consistency. So that is the end of the session as such, but I'm going to open up to any questions or just any comments really, whether you want to write it in the chat or if you do want to come on the microphone. I'm fed up with my own voice now. But hopefully that just takes away the Sunday scaries that I think can sometimes creep in, this time of year when we're trying to do everything at once. I'm going to open up. Is there any questions for me or any comments that anyone wants to make? Or are we going to be sat here in silence? Oh, here's Mum. Hi, Mum.
I'm back.
Okay, I don't think anyone's got any questions. Sophie's going to write down in her planner her three non-negotiables. But as I said, if you do want to share these with me as well for that extra accountability this week, then feel free. But thank you all for taking the time.
Very good.
I'll be up for my dinner now, Mum. I'm going to pick a roast dinner up now.
Thank you. Enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, Joe.
Nice to meet you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all.